All right, time to put it all together. We have our écorché, our male écorché from before, and we have our posed sculpt that has been texture painted and is ready for us to go in there and start to reconfigure our écorché. So the first steps are that we're going to select our écorché and append our posed model. Now, I've already gone in and adjusted the scale of this scan data and everything to roughly fit. So the one thing I'll note is that I took a rough approximation. Okay, it's a very simple rough approximation of the general size of the model. Okay, there was some back and forth. I actually, between my scan data, the clay, and the ZBrush model, I've done things like elongate the legs a little bit and straighten out some elements in the chest to fit the skeleton. So I've already done this to the point now where you have a model that is pretty much geared for you to go in and learn what you need to learn. You're going to have a minimum of problems, but you will have some problems. They'll be good problems. But we're within a working range, something that's not going to be too frustrating for you. So I'm just adjusting my pubic symphysis. There we go. And let's pull forward a little bit. I'm really just going to get that whole pelvic area swallowed up in there. Okay, so what are the first steps that we need to do to get in and start to really put all this together? Keep in mind we have an incredible laundry list of muscles in there. We got a bunch of stuff. So step number one, the skeleton. That's going to serve as our guide. And so we're going to isolate the problems with the pose and the skeleton only, no muscles. Then we're going to use transpose master, and we're going to focus on muscle groups. Okay, we're not going to focus on individual muscles, just groups, upper arm, lower arm, things like that. Once you've got those, then you're back in all of this stuff, all of these subtools, and then you're going to start to sweat. You're going to start to think about and worry about and get all the insertions and origins and spend time understanding those. You got to break it up into these parts, otherwise it's too complex for the human brain to handle. At least my paltry human brain can't handle that much complexity. So I'm going to rotate him. So I want a minimum of issues. So I'm trying to establish a lock in one place. Basically, I just would ideally like to have some part that needs minimal reworking. So I'm almost there. Just twisting the whole thing around. Let's turn some transparency on. And I think we're in that space. Okay. We're in that space enough. Cool. All right, so skeleton. Okay, we want to be working on the skeleton. We want the pose to show. Don't need all that anatomy right now in terms of the muscle drawings. I just need the pose. So, transparency goes on. And the first thing that I think I want to do is just establish the overall tilt. So there is a slight tilt in the model. Slight leaning in. So I'm going to leave it about there. It's very minor, but it's, pretty significant. You don't want to mess that up. Let's make sure that the great trochanters have equal visibility. So there's a little bit left on this side, and there would be a little bit on this side if I pushed out. There we go. Okay. So the great trochanters are within range of each other. The pelvic bone is roughly in range. Roughly. Not happy with that. It's a debate whether or not I get the great trochanters or the ilium in a better position, and I will side with the getting the anterior superior iliac crest lined up. The great trochanters are going to change slightly based on some twisting and things like that. Once that's done, we have effectively already locked in the hips. So step number 1 was the hips. Okay. Step number 2, that's going to be ribs. Okay. Ribs, and then we're going to go down to 3, which is the legs. We're going to pose those guys. How are we going to work with the ribs? Well, let's hide the legs. Control Shift, press Alt, and then Control Shift click, Control Shift click. Okay. Control click to mask, Control Shift click to show everything, Control click to invert. I love it. Enough Control Shift and mental gymnastics to drive you mad. But if that's going to drive you mad, you're going to have even more problems later, so I don't mind throwing it your way. Okay, one thing to note, I have established roughly where that spine is going to switch over. The thoracic is going to then start to change its orientation. Okay, so that's going to now impact where this goes. I'm going to take the line up here, pull it down, then I'm going to take the line in the center and use it to rotate, or the action dot, I should say. So there's several actions that are happening. Make sure I'm in orthogonal view. Again, I'm just rotating, and guess what I'm lining up? Okay, take a second. Guess. What would I be lining up? What would be the most significant bony landmark from the back for me to line up the rotation of the rib? If you said C7 right here, you'd be right. Okay, so C7, and then right here at the 10th rib. Okay, but you can already tell, you know, the muscles pushing this way, so something's happening. The line I have here is not right, and that's going to be taken care of when we come in and we take care of the twist. We're going to really take care of that. Could we use the twist here? Conceivably, yes. I actually hadn't anticipated that working very well, but that is conceivable, and we're getting a little bit better results. You'll see at this point I'm going to be turning things transparency on and off, and I'm going to cheat and move this a little bit. It's not really cheating, to be honest. The lumbar vertebrae are going to experience an enormous amount of motion. The thoracic vertebrae do not, though. Okay, let's look at it from as side view as we can get. We're going to build in that compression. I don't like that. If I put that compression in there, I now need to move this backwards. Oh yeah, there we go. Looking not too shabby. Okay, make sure that even if you're not lining them up, you know, which you shouldn't, you should not line these ribs up. The ribs were made for a different model than the écorché. You should be trying to line up the barrel, or the arch of the rib cage. That you should be lining up. And you might have to use transparency on and off to get that. Line up the sternal notch, pit of the neck. Just checking a measurement there. Okay. Alright, so we got some compression, but at the expense of some height. Need to adjust that sternal notch. Okay. A little bit of height, just a little bit. Not a whole lot. And let's go C7 down to the last thoracic rib. And we can use that to help us with some twist. Okay, let's check the sternum. Okay, I'm going to keep that line in my mind. Escape out, turn transparency back on. We're within range. Could conceivably rotate a little bit more. I'm going to move the model around and make sure that from multiple views I'm still getting success with that. Okay, the only place I'm not is in this extreme side view, and basically we need to rotate this up. Okay. That clavicle is going to get pulled back a fair bit, so it's okay that it's poking forward here. I'm not sweating that. I just want to get the clavicle sitting a little closer to the surface right there. Okay, there we go. Let me check the back and see if that gave me too much volume. Yeah, that's a ton of volume. You see the difference? And then let's compare that with the front. So with the pectoralis, there's almost no spacing. So probably not an ideal unit of measurement. Roughly looking at it straight on, and I'm going to just push it back. So I pulled it forward, now I'm pushing it back. And I feel a little more comfortable with that. Looking at it from below. If you want, you go in and just hide these parts, right? We don't need those legs to be causing us confusion. You don't need those arms. We're focused on the rib cage right now. And C7. Okay. I'd say we're within range. Okay, let's focus on the hips now. Get these guys placed. And for that, isolating the iliums, these guys, and then I'll come down and isolate them. Mask and invert. Alright, solo mode off. Okay, the wings of the ilium are behaving fairly well. The pelvic girdle here, you can turn symmetry on, and I haven't rotated it too much, so let's hide some of the rib cage. Okay, that'll work. But I really want to pull the ilium back a little bit. Make sure symmetry's on. It's a little bit of a dangerous operation. And you may want to have no subtools visible when you do this. I'm going to separate these a little bit. Definitely a little resculpting. Make sure, again, for some of this you really have to make sure that there's no other subtools visible, because it just freaks out the normals, the sampling of the normals. And I really want to capture this curve in the ilium itself. So I'm not sure I'm doing that. Okay, this backwards bowl of it. Let's hide the rib cage. So visibility, hide points. Just going to invert that. Remember, really important, the shape. Okay. And okay, G to show it. Just making sure I get some of these landmarks. Even if it's protruding a little bit, I don't care so long as it's hitting it. And here you see I've kind of hit this a little bit clearer. And so it's going to be a little cleaner when the gluteus medius comes down from its shelf. The maximus is coming from its. I feel better about it. Why am I drawing that off to the side? It's because we don't have the hips in there, the acetabulum. We got to be moving this back a little bit. So we have the pubic bone, but where are we with these great trochanters? Gotta be careful. Anything I do like that, it's going to be a big movement. Okay. I'll live with that. And let's pull in the little bit of custom. Let's just pull in the bone a little bit. Get it on the inside. pulling in the inferior iliac crest. Okay, so a little bit of re-sculpting, and I'm trying to get that this guy right here where the rectus femoris is going to be coming out. I'm trying to make sure I've got that in the right place. The inferior iliac spine. Anterior, inferior iliac crest, or iliac spine. I haven't found a lot of continuity in the way that that's said. Okay. There we go. Last little bit of detail. Okay, so we're within range. Don't know why that was pulled over. Everything is doing what it should be doing. Might pull these ischial spines back a little bit to give the hamstring something to really latch on to. So I'm just making it a little bit more dominant. Okay, and that led me to make the sacrum a little bit more too. Sorry. Done. Now we've got to move on to the leg. So let's see what we've got. Okay, and let's be clear about what we have posed. So we've got everything except for these limbs essentially. And the head, everything. We've got everything except for everything. Engage mouth, disengage brain. Alright. We have a rib cage and hips. We don't even have the lumbar spine really set up right either. So you could even take those guys out. Right now, this is what we got. We have a rib, we have hips, and we feel fairly comfortable with where those guys are. Scapula not counting and clavicle not counting. But that's the foundation, you know. Even if you spend an hour on that foundation, that's fine. That you have to spend that time, because if you get this wrong, you know, the rest of it is largely irrelevant. Everything, the clavicle, scapula depend on the rib cage. The legs depend on the hips. The arms depend on the scapula, which depends on the rib cage. So, gotta have it. I'm a little worried about that sternal notch, and I'm gonna cheat. That's probably rotation that's doing that. Or in fact, I think I actually moved the sculpt. I did. You wouldn't have known that. So there. I'm going to line the sculpt up. This is definitely one of those things where I'm going to line the sculpt up as opposed to moving the model. Because the thoracic is lining up. The sternum wasn't. So move the sculpt. Alright, now we got more to do, but we're within our range, so let's just give ourselves a little turntable. You didn't really want to zoom in on the pelvic area, I don't think. While I have you here, let's create a quick turntable that we can use for the rest of these guys. Pretty easy to do. You just click and drag them off the timeline. To delete them, click on to create them. So there we go. That's the level of what we know so far, but not too bad.